Bill Hanneman is a nuclear engineer and consultant. He's assessed risk at nuclear power plants around the country. I asked him if he thought it would be cost-effective to bring the troubled San Onofre nuclear power plant back online.
I think the answer to that is yes. If you look at the history, the plant has done very well. It's operated essentially 30 years with no real problems like the one that we have now. And it's been a real friend to people in Southern California because it's kept our rates low, believe it or not.
And Hanneman says it would be worth spending hundreds of millions of dollars to bring it safely back online because most of the capital equipment costs are already paid off.
The addition of new steam generators, even if we have to replace the ones in Unit 3, wouldn't be, I don't think, is that bad because they're only 700 million, let's say. And when you have 1 million or more customers that are paying in, that amount can get paid off rather quickly. We will be able to generate the power to cover those costs.
We've been so focused on the failed steam generators at San Onofre, but there are other problems that will cost money, perhaps a lot of money, to address in the not-so-distant future.
Do we want to give them another $1 billion in another 5 years to maybe operate for another 7 years when other costs are right there on the horizon?
Rochelle Becker of the Alliance for Nuclear Responsibility says California ratepayers need to know what other costs are ahead, like costs triggered by what happened at Fukushima.
As you drive into this lovely campground, you notice a sign that says tsunami zone. You notice behind us that there are sirens for emergency planning. You notice the transmission lines that go out of there. And are they safe during a seismic event?
Studies of earthquake fault lines off the coast are currently on hold, but could ultimately reveal major retrofits are needed at San Onofre. Becker says another cost is the unresolved issue of where to store nuclear waste.
Right now, thousands of tons of radioactive waste sit right behind me on our coast. What's it going to look like in 100 years or 200 years? The NRC has no plans right now to get it off our coast, and we've been promised since 1982 that it would be removed to somewhere else someday.
A third unresolved issue, Becker says, is what it'll cost to redesign the plant's cooling system, perhaps with cooling towers to meet new California regulations that protect marine life.
1 million gallons a minute goes through this plant, sucking in sea life, sucking in larvae, taking out warmer water. Now, the alternatives to once-through cooling are really very expensive, technically very challenging, and could reshape this coastline again. They're going to ask ratepayers to pay. I want to know what it's going to cost before they ask me to pay. This plant behind me was designed in 1967. Maybe pouring a lot of money into a new plant would have made sense. New emergency planning, new steam generators, new seismic studies, new liability limits. But doing that for a plant that was designed in the 1960s, how many of us are going to drive a car, fix everything up, and say we're going to drive it another 20 years?
But Bill Hanneman doesn't buy the old car analogy.
I don't see that as a real drawback. I think I've seen some classic cars that are just beautifully restored, and they're really great to see on the road.
And he isn't worried about an accident in the future.
I think we're at the edge of the 50-mile radius right here. We're sitting in the range of something from the plant right now. I'm totally comfortable. For me, the trade-offs in having a solid, good electrical system is far better than, worrying about a small risk that we haven't ever encountered before.
But Becker says beefed-up evacuation planning required after Fukushima may generate more costs. She believes taxpayers' liability is underestimated.
The federal liability limit is $12.6 billion. When you look at what happened at Fukushima, the charges, the damages that they're paying out are over $150 billion. That was a small fishing village in Japan. This is the coast of California.
Becker says the utilities are not ignoring all these issues, but the ratepayer needs to know how these problems will be resolved and what that would cost.
We need to really consider the arguments against nuclear power, the arguments for nuclear power, but those are a side issue. What we really want to know is what is nuclear power going to cost the state of California, cost the ratepayers of California. It's our lives and our livelihoods that are at stake. and we need the answers.
San Onofre's been a source of safe, reliable electricity for decades, but the question of whether it would be safe and cost-effective in the future is more complex. Alison St. John, KPBS News.